Well, welcome to another episode of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse, sponsored by Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors. We are on episode 40 of the show, and we've had some incredible guests this year and this season. But just by happenstance, I'm sending some messages to the author of this incredible book, The Sequence, which we will be getting into in today, diving deep about this book and Allen's journey, a personal journey and a proven framework for commercial real estate brokerage success. And I said, Allen, I have an opening on this Wednesday. Would you like to join the show? And of course, he said, absolutely. We would love to do that. And here we are. So I'm very stoked about this because I didn't, Allen doesn't know this, but I'm a student of the game, right? And if I see someone that has been in the industry for 41 years and done over, I'm not just saying that, Allen, and I just read that you went to your 50th high school reunion as well. But 41 years, done over 2,000 transactions, I'm dialed in, right? I have not been doing this even 10 years yet, right? Not even 10 years. And I'm coming up, and I did a lot of small transactions, but I'm coming up on about transaction 460, right? I did a lot of single family homes my first 18 months for investment. So, however, somebody who's had the staying power of 41 years and 2,000 transactions and is willing to go in and spend the time writing a blueprint, I'm going to read it because I'm going to be a student of the game. So make sure you definitely go check out the book. And if you guys have questions, comments, thoughts, please do drop them down. We are monitoring the lives. Gabe Einhorn, he says the legend Allen Buchanan is here. You must know Gabe. That's awesome. Jason Sneed says, let's go. Yes, let's go. Ratan, he just saw the post and he's very excited about this, as well as Jason Ratcliffe. So thank you all for all of those comments. But if you have questions and comments, I'm monitoring the chat bot right here. Jason Sneed, there you are. We'll pull you right up, man. Let's go. Jason, I've seen you start to get active on the platform, something we're going to talk about with Allen here on a regular basis. My man Allen is putting out videos, snippets of different techniques on a regular basis. I do believe they come out mostly on Tuesday. So I'm going to introduce Allen here in just a second, but thanks again for tuning in to the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse, one of the most interactive experiences that you can have in commercial real estate. For the last 2 weeks, if you have been engaging and following along, you've had access to folks that have been in the industry for collectively 80 years and done 5,000 transactions, and you have the opportunity to ask your questions here live. So that's what we're trying to do. This is our team here in Kansas City, spanning everything from land with development potential all the way over to the medical office side and almost everything in between. If you have a specific need and you are looking to have a property performance audit completed on one of your properties, you're a tenant or a business looking for space, you're a developer trying to figure out what to build on your land, one of our team members can absolutely handle that. We have around $55-60 million of listings right now. So if you are a buyer looking for or looking into the Kansas City market, all asset classes, we have office, retail, industrial, land, and flex industrial as well, so small bay industrial. Please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Here's our awesome team. Love working with those individuals on a regular basis. I've already spent some time kind of discussing what the Market Pulse is. We're on episode 40. My favorite episodes are not here when I'm just talking to myself and presenting information. It is when I get to interview experts of the industry. And this platform has allowed me to get to and have on incredible guests like Allen Buchanan. And he's, like I mentioned, a 41-year veteran. Allen, I know this is going to make you sound a little dated. That's okay. I love spending time with folks that have been in the industry, just doing something for that long. I'm 35 years old. You officially have been doing commercial real estate much longer than I have been alive. I was born in 1990, if you can believe that. So 1990. But this platform allows me to be able to reach out to guests and have a conversation. And Allen has been with Lee and Associates in Orange County, and over the course of his career, has advised hundreds of business owners and investors on the acquisition, the disposition, the leasing of industrial real estate. Industrial real estate has absolutely been a mainstay the last few years, and we'll talk about that today as well. It's actually one of the only asset classes in Q3 that saw a decline in cap rates. I'm going to be dropping the Q3 market report next week, so definitely stay tuned for that episode as well as the full market report. I think it's some of the best research that I have been able to do. I love doing the research now because at my fingertips, I have, GenSpark Super Agent searching thousands and thousands of databases. Prime example, Alan, check this out. We're trying to get a BOV done, completed for a vacant senior living facility, not a certificate of need, but a vacant senior living facility, has not been operational for a year and a half. I start to have my super agent do research, and it was able to pull actually a HUD auction that had 7 different properties, and one of the properties was located in the submarket of this asset class, and we didn't even know about it. Well, it sold last Friday, and we will now know in the next 30 days what the pricing was for that. So that was an advising moment to say, hey, we can give you a per square foot basis, but why don't we wait until this clear indication of where the market is for a very similar project that was foreclosed upon and see where it was sold, because this was a foreclosure as well. So that's one thing we're definitely going to talk about, industrial real estate. But most of today, we'll be talking about The Sequence, Allen's new book, which is the personal journey and framework for commercial real estate brokerage success. So Allen, after all of that 7 minutes of word salad that I just threw out there, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, man. It's just awesome to meet you in person. It's awesome to be a guest on your show, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So thanks immensely.
Yeah, most definitely. Absolutely. Well, what I'd like to do before we jump into the book is just talk about your real estate brokerage journey, right? I mean, 41 years ago, did you believe or did you think you were going to be in commercial real estate brokerage and doing what you're doing now? How did that happen?
So 41 years ago, I hoped I was, because I had made a commitment to join the industry, and I didn't really have a backup plan. Prior to that time, I was in the consumer goods business, and I grew up in a family business. We manufactured and distributed Dr. Pepper, 7-Up, Pepsi Cola. We weren't obviously the original founders, but we were one of the area distributors. And so I always believed my journey was going to be along the family-owned and family-operated business path. About 6 months before graduation, my dad dropped the bombshell in my lap and said, "Son, I'm not going to hire you because you don't know squat. So you need to go learn. You need to go learn the consumer goods business, and the best way to do that is go get a job with someone like Hunt Wesson or Procter and Gamble or Kimberly Clark."
Sure.
So I was fortunate, Logan. I got a job with Procter and Gamble right out of college. They had an opening in the San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up not too far from where you are. I grew up in Texarkana, Arkansas, and then went to school at the University of Arkansas. So I'm about 4.5 hours away from Kansas City. But coincidentally, the Kansas City district was the one that recruited the University of Arkansas campus. And the Kansas City district was a part of the Western United States. Obviously, Kansas City, I don't think of as being Western U.S., but they did. So the opening was in San Francisco Bay Area. No one really wanted to go there. I raised my hand. I said, I'd love to go to the Bay Area. This was in 1979. And so, that's what I did. I spent 5 years in the consumer goods business, and then realized that as my territory was growing, so was my time on an airplane, my time away from my young family. Mm-hmm. That really wasn't working. And so I sought to find something a bit closer to home, something a bit more entrepreneurial, something that I didn't have necessarily a direct report, that I didn't have inventory, and that I had an unlimited income potential. And commercial real estate checked all those boxes. So I was very fortunate to find the industry. I was very fortunate to find my company, who at the time had 2 offices. We now have 83 nationally. And so it's been a phenomenal journey. I can't believe that I have socks older than you are, though. That's pretty amazing.
Haven't ever heard it put that way. That's That's awesome. So how did you make the journey from Texarkana all the way to Orange County, California?
So via the Bay Area, and the job was Procter and Gamble Distributing Company, based in San Mateo, California, 1979.
Okay.
I was employed with the Case Foods division of Procter and Gamble Distributing Company. I had Duncan Hines cake mix, Crisco shortening, Crisco oil, a bunch of amazing products. And so I was tasked with going store to store and trying to sell this stuff.
Yeah.
And little did I realize that Crisco shortening, if a retailer makes 5% gross profit margin on Crisco shortening, that's a good day. They need 22% to keep the doors open. So you can imagine trying to sell a 5% gross margin product in a 22% gross margin arena, pretty tough order. But somehow figured out a way to get that done. But it was remarkable training. I still use some of the things I learned at Procter and Gamble in the late 1970s or early 1980s in my brokerage practice today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I always love hearing people's journeys on how they got started. And, a lot of times what I'll hear is that people, sort of fell into the industry, but it seemed like you had kind of a goal, right? You wanted this unlimited, income potential and entrepreneurial vision. Also, commercial real estate, and real estate being one of the oldest, if not the oldest asset class, around, one of the largest as well. And it's a tangible thing, right? And so yours seemed like it was more of a strategic decision to kind of get into that industry, but having none of that background, right, before kind of getting into real estate, I'm sure there was other industries you could get into, right, that were fully commissioned kind of opportunities. And Lee and Associates having two offices at the time, that was a startup company, right? I mean, that's incredible to even think about, because now I'm on the phone with Lee and Associates in Austin, Texas yesterday, talking about data center land that I have listed here in Kansas City, right? So very, very interesting and kind of cool in regards to that. But, what was real estate just something that was of interest? Did the opportunity just exist? How did that come about?
Very interesting question. When I left the consumer goods business, I called my dad and I said, Dad, I really don't know what I want to do for a living, but I've afforded myself 30 to 45 days to figure it out. And his mind was still along the lines of consumer goods. So he said, I have a good friend. My dad was very involved in the National Soft Drink Association. He says, I've got a good friend in Los Angeles. His name is Jack Atwood. He's the president of Coca-Cola Los Angeles. Why don't you call Jack, go sit down with him and see if he has any pearls of wisdom to give you. And you can imagine going up to Los Angeles, and I entered this gentleman's office, and he's this big strapping guy, gray hair. He's probably in his mid-50s. He's just the epitome of a CEO. And I sit across the desk from him, and after the niceties, he says, so what is it that I can help you with? I said, I'm really searching for a career path. And he asked me three questions, and I answered the three questions. And he said, it sounds to me like you ought to explore commercial real estate. And I said, I have no clue what that even is. And he said, well, you're sitting in a suite of offices. He says, your dad manufactures soft drinks in Texarkana, Texas, out of an industrial building. You had lunch yesterday in a retail strip center. Commercial real estate brokers help owners dispose of assets like that, and they help businesses find space. And I said, that sounds amazing. How would I do that? He said, I'd go and pick up the yellow pages, call the national companies, find out who's doing it in your market, go sit down with them and have a conversation. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did. So this gentleman's advice was so incredibly prescient. To be able to size up my frustrations, to size up where I saw my next, few years, et cetera. And I really believe it was providential. I really believe God put Mr. Atwood in my path, and he gave me the sort of advice that I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how that happens, right? And man, so many times people will ask me, hey, how do you find mentors in this space? How do you find a mentor? Well, I mean, a lot of times it's just going and doing those meetings, right? And asking questions. And, a mentor doesn't have to be someone who's going to take you under their wing. They can just have a meeting with you, push you in the right direction, and completely changed the trajectory of your life. And now, sitting here, you're one of the most respected voices in commercial real estate, right? Being a veteran broker. And I think that's just an incredible thing to kind of point back to. I'm guessing Mr. Atwood's probably not here with us anymore, unless that man is 100 years old, but who knows? But like, it'd be awesome to shake his hand, and just say thank you. I have the same kind of scenarios early on in my career, and I'm excited for the next ones. And honestly, I use these conversations to sort of direct me in the right direction as well. So being able to do it just a lot easier. I don't have to come out to California. Hopefully, I get to meet you in person someday. But like, we get to do it virtually now, which is easier than ever. So that's usually my advice for individuals.
Absolutely. And yes, to your point, Mr. Atwood's no longer with us. I actually, when I was writing the book, Logan, I talk about 6 mentors in my book. One of them, and my favorite mentor, is the one I live with. Her name is Carla Buchanan, and she's my wife of 46 and a half years. She's a constant source of inspiration. She's a tremendous strategist. She's a brilliant, brilliant woman. And I'm very fortunate to call her my wife and my partner. But two of my early mentors are no longer with us. John Earnhardt from Lee & Associates was one of the original founding partners of Lee Orange. His brother, Paul Earnhardt, also a mentor, is still around. And then a gentleman that was one of my managers at Procter & Gamble in the Seattle office, just an absolute, if I can use the phrase, ball buster. I mean, you play professional football, you know what that's about. This guy was an absolute ball buster, and I used to have to rewrite memos literally a half a dozen times, and I just never figured out how to please the guy in terms of how he wanted things written. And little did I know, he was building a muscle. He was helping me do the reps to become the writer that I've become. And I was able to reconnect with, his name is Dwayne Koberg. I was able to reconnect with Dwayne about 2 years ago when we were up in Seattle. I just out of the blue called him, hadn't talked to him in 35 years. I called him, and he pretended he recognized me. He probably didn't. But I just said, Dwayne, I just want to thank you. I said, I hated what we went through at the time, but I must admit, you taught me a skill set that I still use to this day, and I'm so eternally grateful. And I believe he appreciated it. He's a crusty old guy in his 80s, but he really, really appreciated it. So, and then frankly, another one of my mentors is a guy by the name of Doug Molyneux. Doug's with the Mossimo Group. Absolutely transformed my career when I was 61 years old. So, 2 of them are not around anymore, but the other 4 I still am in regular contact with.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's so many things that I can really start with asking about you and your career in your book. Again, if you haven't picked up The Sequence by Allen Buchanan, go pick up that book. All right. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal read. But the one thing I think that everybody's going to kind of go to, especially practitioners, right, is this sequence. But I have to ask, you open the book with a letter to your grandchildren, right?
Yes.
And so why start a brokerage book with legacy instead of the tactics? That's what caught me. I've read hundreds of books, right? It was a stark reminder of what's important in life. But I have to ask that question. You start this book with legacy instead of the tactics. That must be meaningful for you.
Yes. So Logan, what you'll learn about me is I'm very systematic in my thought process. And I wanted to write a book that was not only tactical, but was also personal. Many of us can write tactical books, and you're going to go about it differently than I go about it. And I'm not sitting here suggesting that the way I go about it is necessarily the correct way. It's been the right way for me. But when I think about sequence, I think of it in 2 sort of distinct arenas. The first area is like you've got on the screen there. It's the steps of a commercial real estate deal. And frankly, it's the step of any sales transaction. But the bigger meaning of sequence is it's the sequence of our careers, the sequence of our lives. It's the person we choose to marry. It's where we choose to live. It's what we choose to do for a living. It is how we choose to give back. It's how we choose to treat our fellow man. It's who we choose to worship. And to me, all that's foundational. And so I wanted to start the book on a very, very personal level. And what more personal way than talking to your grandchildren? Mind you, my grandkids, youngest is 15 months old, little Charlie. The oldest is 10, Thomas. And I wanted them to be able to, when they're 35 or 65 or however old, surely people will still be reading books. I hope they will be. I want them to be able to go to this book and say, this is how Papa made a living. This is what Papa did. And this is how Papa did it. And that's just seemed the right way to start and finish the book, frankly. So that's the way the letter to the grandkids came about. And you know, when I wrote it, it came off so amazing. I read it to my wife, and my wife teared up and started crying. My daughter and son-in-law works with me, by the way, Joshua. Daughter and son-in-law ordered some copies, and they had not seen this. And I get this teared up phone call from my daughter saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing." Another daughter-in-law picks up a copy, had not seen a copy, but picked up a copy at our daughter's house and comes out and gives me this big hug. And I thought, what did I do? And she goes, "Oh my God, that was so amazing. The introduction to the book."
Yes.
So, you know, when that happens, you realize, doggone it, I'm on the right track here. You know, it's having the sort of impact that I want it to have.
Absolutely. Yes. And then, you know, the next chapter goes straight into an incredibly personal story, right? Of you becoming a childhood role of a mediator, right? And obviously that's had to shape your negotiation style later in life and for your whole career. I'd like to just kind of piggyback on that and say, you know, my father, and most of my listeners and viewers know this, I've lost my father 10 years ago. He's never met my children, never met my beautiful wife, my number one mentor as well. I'm so glad you said that. By the way, you can't see this, Allen, but when you were talking about your wife, there was all kinds of hearts and support symbols coming up on the LinkedIn Live. So yes, they obviously love that. But you know, my dad, he had struggles with addiction, you know, alcohol, and I had to play as a young boy, you know, not even a man, a young boy. You know, what is dad feeling when he walks through the door? Is he kind of rumbling through the keys to try to get the door open? Is he, you know, what's his tonality? You know, I'm reading those things. So, I mean, that childhood role as mediator, obviously it was very impactful and meaningful for you. And now that shaped, you know, your negotiation style later in life. And people are like, well, how do you become a good real estate practitioner? We could talk about sequence all day and the tactics. It's the empathetic part. And I often hear, I want to get into commercial real estate because it's not emotional. You obviously have not done any real estate deals, right, on the commercial side, because we're dealing with people, and you can replace emotion with ego, maybe even in that scenario, right? So you go to, but there's emotions regardless, and you have to be able to read the room and understand how hard to push, when to pull back, what role do you need to play. So talk to us a little bit about that, right? I mean, your childhood role that had to have, I mean, you were going off to college in what, 6 years, I think, if I remember right.
Yes.
So you were in high school or maybe in grade school, you know, and that's a meaningful thing when a parent says, hey, we're still going to be your parents, but we're not going to live under the same roof. I've lived that, but how was that impactful for you at that point in your life?
Well, I appreciate that question. So the divorce occurred in 1971, summer of June of 1971. Prior to that, which was October of 1970, so about this time of year, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I talk about the contrarian decisions that you make and things in your life that shape you. And so the first contrarian decision was in October of 1970 when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was sitting in homeroom. I'll never forget it. It was about this time of day. And over the intercom, which is the way in the 1970s people got in touch with students, my name comes over the intercom. Allen Buchanan, please come to the lobby. Yep. And I knew my mom was in surgery. I didn't know if that meant she had died. I didn't know I didn't know what that meant. So I schlepped up there, and lo and behold, here's my paternal grandfather and my maternal great aunt. And two stranger bedfellows I've never witnessed. And so I thought to myself immediately, something really bad has happened. I asked them, they wouldn't tell me. So we get to the hospital lobby, and I go into this chaotic entry waiting room. My dad's crying. I didn't know if my mom had died, what the situation was. Come to find out, she'd just simply been diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But I went into the stall, and I got down on my hands and knees in the men's room, and I got down on my hands and knees, and I said, God, I don't know what this means, but I know that I need my mom. I believe my mom needs me. I need you. I am accepting you as my Savior and Lord. This was in 1970. And I immediately felt better. My mom ended up living to the ripe old age of 89. But that was a decision I made at age 13 in Texarkana, Texas, and Wadley Hospital that has shaped the course of my career. The divorce happened 6-8 months later. So imagine that. My mom's diagnosed with breast cancer in 1970. She doesn't know if she's going to live or die. Breast cancer diagnosis in 1970 was a death sentence typically.
Yep.
And then my dad leaves 6 months later. So here she is with 3 small kids. She's about your age. And, you know, I realized very, very quickly that I had to become the oldest son. I had to become the mediator. My dad and mom saw the world entirely differently. I had to be that strong man in the house. I had to mediate between brother, sister, mom, dad, brother, sister, dad. And it was all about understanding what each was trying to accomplish and getting to that place.
Yeah.
And once you understood what each wanted to accomplish, then it was a matter of, all right, how do we help them achieve that? And realizing that there's going to be some give and take along the way. Little brother wants to stay out till midnight. Hey, that's a non-starter with dad. It may not be a non-starter with mom, but what's a reasonable compromise? And so to your point of empathy, I learned empathy at a very, very early age. And frankly, I believe empathy is one of the greatest skills that you can possess as a commercial real estate practitioner. If you don't have empathy for the 2 people, 3 people, 5 people at the negotiating table, you don't have a chance. You really don't.
Right.
You might get lucky, but you really don't have a chance in affecting a successful deal. So that's a very long rambling answer to your question, but that's the way it all came about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the chapter on the contrarian life decisions. A couple more. Marrying young. You've talked about, accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Most all of my listeners, and I probably lost some folks, for being very open and active with my faith. I know I've lost viewership on LinkedIn in regards to being suppressed, just because of that not being my niche, right? Well, it's the biggest part of who I am. Anyways, but you made another decision that I have sort of made this year as well 2 years ago, probably 2.5 years ago now, which was no alcohol, right? So there's several of these contrarian life decisions that the world today likely will tell you that that's not going to bring you lasting joy and peace. And we've moved from kind of this Epicurean, and that's a stoicism, but like this Epicurean modality to more of a hedonistic, right? Modality of you only live once, and this is for my pleasure of doing that. Your trajectory has been quite different, and you've made some life, decisions that are very contrarian to that. And I think that if you want to be successful in some right, or just have less brain damage in your life, there are very few things that you can just eliminate, right? And I think that is something that we definitely share on. So I appreciate the first couple chapters of the sequence, not just jumping straight into sourcing and evaluating, qualifying, getting it under control, and executing and negotiating and talking about the commission and expanding that business, but like, here's who I am. Here's what drives me. Here are my values. And you take for it what it's worth, but I'm talking about legacy. And I've been doing this for 41 years. It was just extremely important for me and impactful. So I just wanted to share that.
That's amazing. And thank you for saying that. And I hear the sincerity. I feel the sincerity. And that's exactly why I wrote it. I don't want to mislead your listeners into believing that I'm some sort of a saint. I'm not. I've got as many warts as anyone.
Sure.
People say, gee, why did you stop drinking? Well, it was pretty simple. I mean, I was a fraternity boy in college. I went to the University of Arkansas, president of my fraternity. I love partying as much as anyone.
Yeah.
And,
Who doesn't?
and frankly, so did my wife. My wife was a sorority girl, and, we got married, and that was our deal. I mean, we were very, very social animals. We went to parties, we hosted parties, and all of a sudden, Logan, when we had kids, and all of a sudden now we're responsible for little lives, and we started to map out what does the next 20, 30, 40 years look like for us. And it dawned on us one day that, look, if we continue down this path, we're going to end up dead, arrested, both, divorced, and this isn't healthy.
Right.
So we made a decision for ourselves and for our family's future, not for some saintly direction. It's been difficult because, as you know, commercial real estate's a very social business, and you're taking clients to lunch, and you're taking clients to games, and you're meeting after work, and you're going to SAOR conferences, and there's a lot that surrounds alcohol and the consumption of alcohol. And to not do that is, it sets you apart. But I knew that for us, it was the right decision.
Yeah,
and it's enabled me to practice commercial real estate in a very clear-headed manner. Do I miss a glass of red wine? Oh my gosh. We went out to dinner last night with the family, and son and daughter-in-law had a glass, or daughter and son-in-law rather had a glass of wine, and I would have loved to partake, but I just know it's not for me. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. So thank you for all of those things. And speaking of having three uncles and my own father all pass away from complications of liver cirrhosis, I can tell you that it is not a healthy decision, regardless. And so there are other things in life. And I was walking into church this morning, and our priest was walking in with me, and he said, said something to me, and I said, look, I mean, I don't know much, but here's two things that I do know. If I come here every single day after I drop my kids off, and I spend an hour in church, going to mass, listening to the gospels, and trying to live that out and embody that, and I also work out my mind and my body every day, those are two asymmetrical bets that I can make that have unlimited upside and very, very limited downside. Everything else in my life, I'm other than loving on my family, I don't know that have no downsides, right? So I'm going to knock those two things out every single day, right?
yeah.
So it's just a defining thing for me.
Well, Logan, what you're doing, and you have a very disciplined background of being a professional athlete, which I envy. I was never very good at sports. That's why I played golf. But I was decent at golf. How's that? But the point you're making is it allows you to show up at your vocation centered. It allows you to show up knowing that you've praised the Lord, you've taken care of your body, and you're prepared. You're prepared every single day. I write about in the book, and I'm sure being an athlete, I'm sure you'll appreciate this. I write about in the book my morning routine.
Yep.
And for your listeners, morning routine for me, has been so critical. It truly has. It really allows me to, like you, show up every single day, prepared, ready to meet the day.
That's exactly right. Yes, 100%. I mean, my morning routine is so important, to the point where my wife says, are you a robot? And I said, no, I'm not a robot. So believe it or not, Alan, one thing I'm trying to learn is how to be funnier because my wife loves to laugh. Most of the time she's just laughing at me, and I'm trying to create her how to laugh with me, right? And so I'm
Uh,
reading articles about humor and things like that, right? But,
okay.
I do want to just point out Jeremy M here being live with us. He also chose not to drink anymore. 4 years of no alcohol. Way to go, Jeremy. Way to
Good
go,
for you,
man.
Jeremy.
Would show up so much more impactful. And people do ask, Logan, where does your energy come from? Because people think that I'm just this big extrovert. I'm not. I am by myself a lot. I'm actually an ambivert because the moment that I wake up from 5 o'clock to 7, those are 2 hours that I've got. And then after that, I have three little kids, 6 and under, that I have to, I get to be their fathers for, right? And so they're looking at me and they're saying, they might not remember what I'm saying, but they're remembering what I do, right? And now my son wakes up and he comes downstairs and he's doing pull-ups and sit-ups and he's 5 years old, right? 5 years
That's
old.
awesome.
And the kid's got his own little weight bench. And I show pictures of him to people in Nashville last week and they're like, what? That's your son? He's 5? I'm like, look at his muscles. I'm like, look, the kid puts in the work, like, I don't know what to tell you. Before he eats ice cream, he sits in and knocks out 25 push-ups because he's like, look, I got to earn this ice cream, right? Those are just things.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that every parent should do that, right? But like, he has a very similar personality to me. We have ADHD. I know we do. We have extreme focus. We have extreme diligence, but we have to point it in the right direction. So when he gets upset, man. And so my mom poured into me early on saying, hey, this guy's different. I need to parent him differently. He has so much energy that he needs in focus that he's got to put it in the right direction. So with things like alcohol or staying up late or things like that, those, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Like, for example, 3 years ago, I'd never swung really a golf club, right? In less than 12 months, I'm a 12 handicap playing in golf tournaments and people are inviting me, right? So, but then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm taking away from not only my family, but my business, because sure, you can get some real estate deals done. I was up on the driving range, just grinding it out, right? How can I hit this, 5-iron, 225 yards down the middle, right? Like, what impact is that going to have? I did it, but like it had a big detriment. So just know that with your strengths, I always tell my team this, anybody that talks to me, your strengths or your talents, your God-given talents, if cultivated into strengths, they have balconies, but they also have basements. And I think that's a perfect segue into actually talking about, the sequence of the book, right? 37, 38 minutes in, and we're just talking about, but I think that what we've talked about is some of the most important things. Most of our listeners being younger, listen to what we have talked about the last 37 minutes. We can give you strategies and tactics and execution all day long. You can find that, it's in the book. But these stories and these things, these contrarian life decisions are ones that really going to allow you to take the actual strategies and go implement them over time consistently on a regular basis. So just a little bit of a rant there from me, of course, because I can talk. Alan, did you have anything to add to that?
No, just that what you and I have spent 38 minutes talking about, I believe is important because if you don't have the proper mindset, and shout out to my friend Amy Calandrino, who has the Mindset podcast. If you don't have the correct mindset to do the commercial real estate business every single day, between you and me, you're not going to be that successful. You might, you might be okay successful, but you're not going to be an elite producer. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things, your morning routine, who you love, your faith, how you start each and every day, and how you show up to your clients and to your workplace, those all have a huge impact on how successful you're going to be in this profession. So, hey, we have built the foundation quite nicely, my friend.
I think so too. Well, for someone hearing the sequence for the first time, right? What do you think that the biggest is? We're not going to go through every single level. You got to go get the book, The Sequence, and you can read it. It's a great read. But maybe somebody hearing that for the first time, what do you think the single biggest misunderstanding is from brokers that they have about how deals actually get done? after consummating 2,000 plus transactions now?
I think as an industry, we're pretty lousy qualifiers, and that's why the qualify framework is a hinge point of the sequence. And for those of your listeners who are unfamiliar, the sequence acronym are the steps of a commercial real estate transaction. And I had to come up with a way to explain this succinctly whenever I onboarded someone new. It started with our son-in-law, Joshua. And I had to explain to Joshua, here is a commercial real estate transaction. It starts with a source. We evaluate it, we qualify it, we get it under control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But so many people are afraid, Logan, to ask the difficult questions. They're afraid of maybe alienating a prospect or having a prospect tell them that's none of your business or whatever the case may be. So as an industry, I believe we can get a heck of a lot better at qualifying. And that's why I've created a seminar specifically on the Qualify framework. And Qualify works like this. And if you've seen my Tuesday traffic tips the last couple of weeks, I gave a brief overview, and then I'm going through each and every letter. But the Q of Qualify stands for quantitative need. The U stands for urgency. And then the Y of Qualify stands for yearning. Those three have to work in concert with one another. The A stands for authority. How many times do we spin our wheels not working with a decision maker?
Right.
The L is loyalty. I don't believe there's any better way to express loyalty than getting a signed engagement agreement from anyone you're working with, both on the agency side as well as the tenant rep side. The I is intention, and too frequently intentions are misaligned. An occupant wants to pay $100 a square foot for a building, and the going rate is $200 a square foot. That's a real misalignment that someone's going to have to bring in focus. You've got fuel, which is another way of saying, do they have the resources to actually effect a commercial real estate transaction? Do they have the banking relationships? Do they have the down payment? Do they have a person that can tour buildings? Do they have in-house legal counsel, or does that need to be outsourced? Have they assembled their financials? So all that falls into the fuel category. And then we've talked about why, which is yearning. So if you will put every single prospect, every single deal you're considering through the Qualify framework, my experience is you're going to make more deals. You're going to convert more leads into transactions just by becoming a better qualifier. So in my mind, that is the most important piece. Now, the most underutilized piece in my experience is the expand piece. That's the last E of sequence. And what do I mean by expand? Ed Winslow has authored a very nice book called Proof Stacking. Bob Knackel is an amazing proof stacker. This is what Mo Regalado teaches and preaches. You got to stack that proof. Nina Steiner in my market does a great job of proof stacking. Anytime you do a deal, that becomes a tremendous source of your next deal. And if you're careful in the way you expand that, in other words, who are the tenants in the marketplace that could benefit by knowing a building down the street from them just leased? Which owners that own a similar sized building could benefit from knowing that a similar sized building just leased or sold in my marketplace? What other brokers that might be working with a tenant or a buyer could benefit from knowing about a transaction that you just closed? So if you're methodical, strategic about the way you expand wins, you will find that this whole circle of life starts over. Expand creates new sources of commercial real estate deals. So in my mind, once again, Qualify is the most important letter within sequence. Expand is the most underutilized.
Spike the football, share the tape. Spike
Here,
the
baby.
football, share the tape, right? I mean, everything I'm trying to do is proof stacking, right?
Yes.
And how can we get? And I've got some brokers that have just joined, and they say, "Look, hey, where does my time need to be, right? I feel like I'm not doing enough. Should I be filling up my prospecting pipeline versus working on my deals?" And I looked at them this week on Monday to get them set up the right way, and I said, "Look, and Mitch, if you're listening in, I know you're okay me sharing this. I said, you have 2 active deals. You have 3 active buyers. After you can actually execute on one of these deals, that will be fuel for you to go pipeline and prospect the next one, right? So you need a track record right now. You need something to talk about, because right now, all you're talking about is the things that I have done. We need to get that for you so you can live that, feel that, breathe that, and then go use that to expand. So spike the football and share the tape all day long. I love it.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Absolutely. Okay, so I know that 2019 was a pivotal year for you, right? And you've worked on maintaining elite performance in there since then. But like, one thing I wanted to kind of bring up, just moving on, is a little bit about the mindset. You've touched on the mindset of a high performing, person, and in this case, a high performing broker. Right. So what is your daily routine? I mean, just, you don't have to walk us through your morning routine, but how does it reflect the principles that you wrote about in the sequence? Because most times, and I was surprised. So I run a group myself, and with a business partner, and we had 60 people down in Nashville last week. And 3 months ago, I met this individual, a real estate investor, for the first time. And he's like, I'm having a hard time getting up in the morning, and my days just feel like they're crazy busy. And I said, well, what time do you get up? And he said, 7 o'clock. And I said, well, I get up at 5. So I've got 2 hours on you. He goes, well, I just never could do that. I said, well, what time do you go to bed? Well, between 11 and midnight. I'm like, well, what are you doing from like 9 to midnight? Because unless you're doing something positive, which most people are not, it's probably not self-sufficient. I see him, last week in Nashville. The guy's got more energy. He's healthy. He's changed his diet, right? He's done his first commercial real estate deal, banked 50 grand while working a full-time job. I said, what changed? And he looked at me in the face after taking me to the airport, and he said, I'm getting up earlier. And I'm like, wow, and I think that was something that was really incredible, right? And so anyways, I just wanted to kind of get your general thoughts of the mindset, being disciplined and focus and consistency behind being a high performance broker.
Yeah. So for me, it is, you must manage your time or it's going to manage you. I know that sounds trite, but one of the things I learned through Rudson and Massimo's coaching program is, the tactic of time blocking. And that is setting a meeting with yourself to get the most important things of the day accomplished. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm very, very diligent about is planning my weeks and planning those in advance. Now, does that mean I hit every single meeting with myself all the time? Of course not. But I've got a plan. You look at my calendar right now, and you'll see blocks of time set aside for specific tasks. And those tasks are precursors to getting my overarching objectives, my overarching goals accomplished. And so that might be a time block to prospect with folks for a new listing. That might be a time block for contacting inactive clients, folks with whom I've not done business in months or years. That might include time to spend with Logan Freeman on his podcast. That might be a meeting that I already have scheduled that's recurring. Maybe it's a strategic networking meeting that I have on a recurring basis. But time blocking your weeks so that you have that appointment with yourself has enabled me to manage my day, manage the chaos of being a broker much, much more effectively.
Yes, 100%. Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. I think it was not the first book, obviously. There's books before that, but one that went mainstream and widely adopted. And from a mentality, if you can think it, you can achieve it, right? And every new thing begins as an idea in our brain. That's what separates human beings as different from other animals, amongst other things. But the biggest thing is we have hope. We have hope, right? The birds of the sky, they're going south regardless, right? Like they're going. That's inside of them, right? So we have hope. And John Mitchell, he wrote the book. What I think is like the sequel to Napoleon Hill's book. He studied it for years and then wrote The Missing Secret, which just basically says we've got 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day going through our heads. 90% of them are previous thoughts we've already had. And when you wake up, you are either in survive mode or you're in creator and abundance mode. And it's your job to stay in that creator and abundance mode. Dr. Joe Dispenza has a lot of workout on this as well. And so I have a methodology. Well, I utilize his methodology that for 12 minutes every single morning, after I'm pouring the Gospels and the Old Testament into my brain, I've got this 12-minute thing that I have written through his methodology that is programming this subconscious mind, right? And figuring out how to attract those things into my life. People ask, how did you lose 100 pounds in 6 months? Well, I didn't have an identity of somebody who just worked out. I had an identity of somebody who wanted to attract a woman that looked a certain way and lived a certain lifestyle that would be attracted to me. So I had to become the man that could attract that into my life. It's no different with real estate deals. If you're in a competitive brokerage situation and there's 5 brokerages going on, they're going to be reading the room on how you show up, your energy levels, are you prepared, all of those things. And that's in my methodology that I have in my mantra for 12 minutes, training my brain, because most of what's happening and realizing this after reading The Secret, the missing secret, is that, a lot of the actions and things that we do are subconscious. Anybody here ever driven home and not realized that they didn't even remember the drive home? That's your subconscious brain getting you home, right? So why not having that pointed in the right direction of abundance and what you're trying to accomplish? So I couldn't agree more with this mindset stuff. I think it's very important.
Yeah, and to even quote an author that's even further back, and the two that you mentioned probably are disciples, but Norman Vincent Peale wrote The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yes.
They probably back in the 60s or 70s, and his Norman Vincent Peale was a pastor. And so that is, you and I have shared our faiths. That is a direction. And I started positive thinking when I was in, right after my parents got divorced. And, the whole aspect of visualization when I was playing golf, because Jack Nicklaus was big into visualization. Jack Nicklaus was one of my young man heroes, because I love the way he went about it. And he used to visualize every golf shot before he struck it. And it's all related to what you're describing. It is empowering that subconscious to behave and attract the things that we want in our lives. And I could not agree more with that.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask my son what PMA, or my daughter, PMA stands for, they're going to say positive mental attitude. If you ask them, how do you implement that? They're going to give you 3 things. The first one being we're not giving pain, anxiety, negativity a voice today. Number 2, we're taking quitting off the tables. Freeman's do not quit. My daughter in preschool used to say, my name is Isabella Mae Freeman. I can and I will do it. When she was trying to tie her shoes, the teachers were just like, who are these guys as parents? And they finally met me and they're like, oh, okay, now that makes a lot of sense. But number 3, and I think maybe most important, is how do you do that? Well, we have to focus on gratitude, right? So when I finish this ultra marathon, I don't look like a runner, right? Well, maybe I do. But if you meet me, I'm 6'3", 240 pounds, football player. I'm not a runner, right? I go and run this ultra marathon, 33 miles, 4,000 feet of elevation. I show up with, road shoes, hadn't trained on the trails at all, never run a hill in my life. And that's just exaggerating a little bit. And these guys have got these trekking poles in their trail shoes. And they're like, where are your shoes at, man? And I'm like, well, I thought we were running on the road today. And so I had 3 things that I was going to do. I took quitting off the table. I was finishing. Number 2, I was not giving pain a voice. It hurt. And number 3, every mile, every step, I was trying to focus on something that I was grateful for. So there's 3 actionable takeaways for you guys in regards to that mindset. Oh my gosh, we have so much that we didn't even get close to getting into today. So Allen, part 2, we will be in touch to get through that information, because I didn't know it was going to take 54 minutes, but we have to get to my favorite section. So we'll have you back on here in the near future before Thanksgiving, hopefully, and do part 2, get into some more tactics of the book and things like that. But outside of your own book, The Sequence, and I knew you wouldn't say that anyways, what is your favorite book?
I'll give you two. I thought about this because I saw you do this with Corey. I really like Jeb Blunt, Fanatical Prospecting. For
Yes.
me, that was a game changer. Really, really enjoyed that. I love the way, and I listened to it. I didn't read it, but I also love A Case for Christ with Lee Strobel. That's one of my all-time favorites. So those are that's my favorite business book and my favorite, let's call it, spiritual book.
Okay. I'm writing that down right now. Case for Christ, because I have studied at length Jeb Blunt's, not only fanatical prospecting, but objections, the red herrings, all of it. So absolutely phenomenal. Sales gravy, baby. Let's put some sales gravy on it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I love that. He's got his new book out for LinkedIn as well.
You'll love Fanatical Prospecting. My coach, Doug Molyneux, used to say, if you told me I had to read 12 sales books throughout the year, I'd read Fanatical Prospecting 12 times.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's that good. It's really, really good. And you're welcome.
Yes, exactly. Yes, 100%. I know this might be tough after doing 2,000 plus deals, but does a deal that you've worked on stand out to you?
100%. 100%. It was a corporate disposition that I closed in 2010. I had prospected this group in 2003. I saw the tectonic shift of corporate occupants leaving Orange County, California, and moving into more business-friendly states. And I also saw a voracious developer appetite that was taking hold. And so it was kind of the perfect storm. These corporate users were leaving. They had these massive manufacturing campuses. Developers were purchasing those and converting those into, smaller, newer logistics type hubs. And so I had this deal under contract at the tail end of 2008. And if you recall, there was a little bit of a financial hiccup at the tail end of 2008.
The little one.
So I literally saw that deal, which at the time was an $18 million deal. I stood to make about $600,000. It was going to be my biggest transaction to date. And it completely imploded. Fortunately, the group kept me on as their exclusive agent. The market dramatically changed in a period of 30 days. Values dropped 40%. Lenders stopped lending. Occupants stopped buying. No developer was willing to take a risk to acquire a spec site. And so it took us another 18 months to sell the deal. We finally sold it in 2010. We actually sold it for more money than we would have sold it in 2010. I had a cooperating broker, so I didn't make nearly as much money, but just getting that deal across the goal line, Logan, was I could literally write a book about that deal alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. We've given a lot of advice for brokers today. I'm actually going to pause because I want to hit best advice for all brokers on episode 2, because we've got more to get into that I think might play into that. But what's one of the habits that's been key to your success? Can't say morning routine. Give us a different habit.
Oh, shoot. That was going to be my best habit. Consistency. How's that?
Yeah. Yes.
Consistency. And I could couple that and say, if you want to be successful in brokerage, in social media marketing, and virtually anything you do in your life, first and foremost, be authentic. Second, be consistent. And third, be relevant. And as I am now 68 years old, Logan, between you and me, I struggle with relevance.
Yeah.
Because, I look around and a lot more people in the business look like you these days than look like me.
Yes, that's true. But the good ones want to be spending time with folks like you. I'll tell you that. That's for sure.
What a nice thing to say. Well, you know that anytime you want, my friend, my phone and my virtual screen is open to you.
I appreciate that. Well, sorry, am I back?
You're back.
I'm not sure what happened there, but I'm struggling with relevancy as well. I was at the Chiefs game on Monday night. Go Chiefs. Yeah, I'm up in the suites, and this younger person comes up, and they use the word chuggy. And I was like, what did you say? And they said, chuggy. You don't know what chuggy means? And I'm like, no. So they went on this 30-minute explanation of what chuggy is. So it's not just you, Alan. I don't know what the heck chuggy still to this day, but I will not be using that. So relevancy is very important for sure. Yeah. Key takeaways from me today. Again, episode 2, we're going to get it scheduled here in the next couple of weeks. Success is not luck; it's structure. Right? Systems are going to free you up to build relationships. Mastering the fundamentals never goes out of style. Right, Alan? I just have to say thank you for reminding us that process creates freedom. And if you haven't yet, pick up the sequence. Follow Alan on the Tuesday traffic tips, if I got that right. It's a long YouTube series. Alan, where else can people find you in regards to just following you and learning?
Yeah, so the 2 social channels I'm most active on are LinkedIn and Twitter. Allen Buchanan at Allen Buchanan on both. If you'd like to call me, my mobile number, you can call me, text me 714-624-3896. A Buchanan, spelled Buchanan, at lee-associates.com is email. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. The folks that I get unsolicited responses on the sequence have just been phenomenal. And I can't ever get enough of those. So yeah, please, let's connect.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Alan. Lots of engagement here today. It's been phenomenal. If you're interested in Kansas City commercial real estate, you can find us at mwcreadvisors.com. We're going to be here weekly on a regular basis, continuing to bring experts like Alan himself onto the show and giving you updates on deal spotlights, market reports, and everything commercial real estate in Kansas City. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate all of you being here, and we'll be back in the next week for another episode of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. Alan, thank you again.
Thank you, friend. I really appreciate it. It was fun.